using a contract maybe that you have gotten passed down from your business coach or you got it from your colleague or perhaps even your training organization or Google. Just know that those are definitely not going to provide you the protection that you really want in your business. They have been drafted most likely for someone else's business.
Welcome to the Process to Profit podcast, where we find out about the key processes and productivity techniques that drive successful service-based businesses. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale, join us as we uncover practical strategies to streamline your operations and help you make more money by boosting your profitability. Let's get started. My guest today is Kristin Santamaria. Kristin is one of the two attorney co-founders of Dotted Lines, where she and her BFF Kelly help coaches and online entrepreneurs get confident and have peace of mind with a comprehensive legal protection strategy. Kristin has over a decade of legal experience and started her career working at a large international law firm where she helped entrepreneurs ranging from small startups to Fortune 100 companies draft their contracts and protect their businesses. She now loves serving the cause of coaches and online entrepreneurs through legal contract templates and legal education so they can grow their reach and amplify their impact. Kristin, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Lauren. I've been so excited to chat with you.
Yes, we go way back a few months. So I'm glad that we were able to do this. So obviously I read your bio, but why don't you kind of go a little bit more in depth, tell us kind of where you came from, who you help, all of those good things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you said, I started my career at a large international law firm. And then after many years of working there, kind of ran into my own health issues, which actually kind of helped me stumble into the world of entrepreneurship. I started working with some great online coaches and really just saw that there was a huge need for really industry specific legal education and legal contracts. So, like you said, I do business with my longtime best friend, which has been so much fun. But we are really passionate about serving the small business industry and just absolutely love helping people get more confident through legal protection.
Yeah, and you're right. Like, there's such a need for that because there's so many misconceptions around like what is legal in your business and what isn't. And there's a lot of people talking about things online that maybe shouldn't be or maybe don't have the knowledge to be talking about those things. So, what are some mistakes or mishaps you see, especially, businesses just starting out? That they make, just starting out of in the legal realm, maybe things that they're doing incorrectly that they may not be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the first things that we see people really get hung up on, which I hate when I see people get hung up on this, is but really waiting to get their legal entity formed or get their contracts in place until they have really kind of hit some milestone in their head, whether it be hitting X amount of revenue or having seen, 20 clients or something like that. And we hate this because being an entrepreneur is a really vulnerable thing. So you're putting yourself out there. You're probably sharing your personal story to the world. And a lot of people, we came from working at a big company or we worked for an employer that had all of our legal ducks in a row for us. We didn't have to worry about legal protection because it was something they did, for us. So we didn't even know about it. It just happened. So we love to see people get kind of their legal protection in place as soon as they are really getting their business off the ground. Because legal protection is one of those things where even though it's amazing, it does so much for your business. It's no magic. So it can protect, from things that happened in the past. So, if something came up and happened with your very first client and you don't have your contracts in place, or you don't have your legal entity, which is like your limited liability company, in most cases, your LLC in place, you're not unfortunately not going to get that legal protection, which it's just really hard. And we hate seeing people kind of put it off or kind of wait until they hit this milestone in their head. Another thing that we see kind of come up when this happens is that people really hold themselves back. So you're going to have this subconscious fear that you're not protected, or it's kind of that, you don't know what you don't know type of thing coming in. Or you think maybe I'll figure this out later. And then months go by and you're still worried. You have those random nights where you wake up in the middle of the night and you're in a cold sweat, like, what should I really have in place to protect my business? So, and really it can be very simple in terms of, kind of the things you do need to get in place. But we do see a lot of people kind of either wait too long or, just kind of linger with this kind of little bit of anxiety, I guess, as they're getting started. And we would love to see people just get that taken care of so they don't have to worry about it. Doesn't hold them back in their business.
So, along those lines, what do you think are sort of the basics that people, when they're just getting started, should really focus on? You talked about forming your legal entity. Beyond that, what are the sort of what's the bare minimum that they should really have once they start their business and get their business up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into kind of the meaty legal part of this podcast, I will give kind of our disclaimer that we give about when we do these kind of things. So
You
just
are a lawyer,
um
so that is very on brand.
yeah, so very on brand of us. We encourage all of our customers to do this too. So obviously you'll have a different disclaimer you give. But for us, we do not form any attorney or client relationships through dotted lines. Everything we do is from a education standpoint. So everything we talk about today is purely for educational purposes only, and should not be taken as legal advice. And we don't form attorney client relationships. But we do have a ton of really, really helpful resources and so much education and templates for you to get really confident in putting that in place for your business for yourself. But with that kind of behind us, there's three things that Kelly and I love to encourage entrepreneurs to focus on because it can be really overwhelming when you're starting your business and there are a lot of little things you think, that are swirling around your head, legal related that you want to get done, but kind of three big buckets of things that you definitely want to make sure you have checked off. So one, like you said, Lauren, is that limit on your LLC formation. This can be any kind of legal entity. And it does depend on where you're located. It also depends on what kind of business you have. So there are other types of legal entities. There are partnerships, corporations, all kinds of things. But for most small business owners, LLC, if you were the only owner of your business, you're running some sort of coaching type business or consulting business, barring kind of a special situation, a unique situation. A lot of times an LLC is a great choice of entity for you. We do always encourage people to speak to their accountant about that. Or to, if they have an attorney, to ask them about that. That can be a great one to have some other input on too, just to make sure you're making the right decision. But the fantastic thing about a legal entity is it really sets up kind of a fence around your personal assets and protects them from things that may come up in your business, which is huge because many of us, we've worked in it, we've worked in corporate America perhaps, or we've had other jobs and we have some savings, saved up. And so you really want to protect kind of everything you've worked so hard to create. So that is a huge benefit of having your LLC in place is if you have a liability come up in your business. So let's say someone sues you or somehow you have a debt or some other liability that comes up, your personal assets, so things in your personal bank account, your personal belongings, your house, things like that are not going to be able to be used to satisfy a claim in your business. So obviously it gives you a ton of peace of mind to have that in place. We think that for the vast majority of people, it makes sense to go ahead and get that set up as soon as you can, because like we mentioned, if you have something come up later down the road, that, you're going to be able to protect from that if you form your LLC now, but it can't protect against things that happened yesterday. So always a good idea to get that up and running, earlier rather than later, just for peace of mind. And it gives you that incredible protection as long as you are kind of treating your LLC truly as separate from yourself. You're signing documents on behalf of your business, not in your personal name, have separate bank accounts, things like that. Keep good personal records. But as long as you're doing those things and really just making sure you treat your LLC as separate from you, which can be hard if you're a solo entrepreneur, like many of us are. But as long as you're doing that, having that liability protection is so important and so key. And then kind of the second piece, of course, is going to be having contracts in place. And so, making sure that your contracts are really specific to each type of offering you have. So if you're someone that has a one-on-one coaching offering, and then maybe you do group coaching, or you have a course or a membership, or you have a website, you can need website policies. There are different legal contracts that you want and you need to protect you in all of those different types of offerings because there are different legal considerations and special issues that come up in each of those. So you really want to make sure you have those offering specific documents and that you've got them drafted by someone who really understands your industry is very important because the kind of small business, online business industry is unique. A lot of contracts from kind of the big box legal service providers are probably not going to be as perfectly suited for you as they could be. And then beyond that, having business insurance in place is super important. It can kind of help pick up little holes you may have in your legal protection strategy, but really importantly is that if you were to get sued, most of the time your business insurance is going to be able to help you cover attorney's fees as you're going through that process, which is going to be fantastic. So even if you end up winning, right, in maybe your contract, hopefully, provided that you can recover those attorney's fees, it will help you kind of fund those as you're going along. So super, super great to have. But those are kind of our top three things we like to see people get in place sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I have business insurance, but I had no idea that it would pay my attorney's fees, so that's good to know. And, when people are just starting their businesses, they're so focused on like providing service and helping people and getting clients and building, an income that they often forget about all of the legal aspects. So I'm so glad we're here talking about these things. And what's really interesting about the service that you provide is I actually, when I started, had never met you and was trying to get a contract reviewed by a lawyer because I was trying to hire a VA and I wanted an agreement and I wanted to make sure it was all above board. And I could not find a lawyer to actually look at it. Like, I was willing to pay, I will pay. And nobody wanted to look at it. Nobody wanted to give me feedback. They're all very busy. They already have clients. Like, they're not well versed in the online world. And so they're just like, I don't even want to touch that. I'm not even interested. So I love that you provide all of these things for people so that they don't have to go and try to hunt down a lawyer who understands online business and is willing to take them on just for, a few hours of work and actually answers emails and is willing to actually talk to them. So the fact that you have all of these things available for people to buy and make it so much easier, I think is so wonderful. So we talked about sort of what they need to get started, but what about people who have been in business for a while and maybe they haven't really considered a lot of these things? Maybe they've been writing their own contracts, guilty, for their own business. What's the best step for them to take of sort of like, all right, I've been in business for a while. I haven't really paid attention to this stuff. I've done kind of the bare minimum, but now I'm really ready to like take this seriously. What should they take on as their next step?
Yeah, absolutely. So if that's you, definitely, don't panic. We have customers that are like this. And so, if this is you, you are in good company. There are a lot of business owners that are in the exact same spot. So no judgment whatsoever. But if you are really kind of looking to start getting some of your legal ducks in a row, hopefully by now you probably have your legal entity formed. But as there are some people that do kind of operate as a sole proprietorship for quite some time. So if that's you, that would probably be a great next step is looking into getting your legal entity formed. Like I mentioned, a lot of times for us solo entrepreneurs, LLCs are fantastic options, but that would be, kind of the first thing to make sure you're checking off your list. And then if you are, using a contract maybe that you have gotten passed down from your business coach or you got it from your colleague or perhaps even your training organization,
Or
because we
Google?
see that a lot, or Google, absolutely. Just know that those are definitely not going to provide you the protection that you really want in your business. And the kind of the thing to keep in mind too is that they have been drafted most likely for someone else's business. So they may work great for someone else's business, but you are not really in the driver's seat of what makes sense for your business in that contract. Just some examples are things like refund policies, right? Or even certain intellectual property protections. You want to make sure you really thought through those issues and what makes sense for you as a business owner, because that definitely does impact your bottom line. To make sure you have all of these protections set up. and to make sure you've kind of drafted your contracts with what makes sense for you instead of what makes sense for someone else. But I think getting your contracts in place is excellent. Kelly and I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and we spoke on kind of similar topic, and someone raised their hand at the end and said they've been in business for 20 years and, hadn't learned some of the things that we talked about. And she would actually end up being a customer. And so, it's definitely never too late for you as long as you intend on continuing to grow your business, which you're listening to this podcast, I know you do. It's never too late and you can just move forward with that much more confidence if you do get those, specific contracts that are drafted for your industry, drafted to fit your specific offering in place can just do so much for your confidence and really just help you get that confidence to get your message out there and help you kind of amplify your impact because I know we all have impact driven businesses here and get a lot of satisfaction out of helping other people. So never know. No, it's never too late. And definitely, like I mentioned, make sure you've got your LLC in place or your legal entity, whatever type makes sense for you. And then go ahead and get your contracts set up and make sure they're specific to your offerings. That can do a lot for your business.
So, what types of contracts should someone have in place? Say that they are, and I know that you are not giving them specific legal advice, but in general, say that they are a coach and they do have a couple of different programs. What's the basics that you would recommend? Because we keep saying contracts, but we haven't talked about specifically what those contracts actually are. So, which contracts should someone make sure that they do have in place in their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. So, because a lot of times it is very amorphous, like get your contract set up, but what exactly are we talking about here? So, if you're an online business owner, which most of you guys are listening to this are going to be, is first and foremost, you need your website policies, right? Because especially your privacy policy is going to help you comply with a lot of really confusing privacy laws both international and US based. And we see different states coming out, practically every week with new privacy laws that very much mirror some of the big privacy legislation that came out in the EU a couple years ago. So you're going to want to have your privacy policy in place. You're going to want a website terms and conditions. And this document is actually one that does a lot for your business, has a lot of protections in it because you're basically going to be putting every single person who visits your website. So, say you're someone who is a coach, you take discovery calls and you end up getting clients right through your website. They book their discovery calls there. Every single person who comes to your website just by default of being on your website is going to agree to all the major terms of working with you. So, everything from your refund policy to how you handle suits in your business your intellectual property protections, all of that is built into your website terms and conditions. So there are notice of that, they agree to it. And then you're going to have your website disclaimer. So kind of like what you mentioned, Lauren, the disclaimer that I gave for this podcast, but much more comprehensive so that, if someone's visiting your website, you really have clearly laid out your scope of your practice, what you do, what you don't do, what kind of advice you may give or you may not give. And then just other important kind of disclaimers around everything from affiliate relationships you may be involved in to, technology outages. If you have a online course or something like that, and you can be, held liable for outages in technology. So it's really comprehensive. But those are kind of the three things you need for your website. And then when it comes to, if you're a coach and you have a one-on-one coaching program, we have a one-on-one coaching agreement, and that is going to be the document that really sets out all the important terms of your relationship with your client. So everything from the services you're going to provide to, of course, your fees, your refund policies, payment plans, how you handle confidential information, all of that is clearly laid out in your one-on-one coaching agreement. And if you're someone who is a health and wellness related practitioner or coach, we do also recommend having in place what's called an assumption of risk and release of liability in addition to your one on one coaching agreement. And that document just goes really deep into kind of similar things to what I mentioned in your website disclaimer, but really deep into the scope of your practice, what you do, what kind of advice you can give, what kind of advice you can't give, and even things like if you need to refer someone to a different type of practitioner, you have the ability to do so. So those two documents, if you are a health and wellness practitioner, and if you're not, just that one-on-one client agreement is going to be great to kind of protect you in your one-on-one coaching offerings. And then if you have a group coaching program, something called a group coaching agreement is going to be what you want to protect yourself and to make sure also that your group members have the best possible experience in your group. So it's going to go over a lot of things similar to the one-on-one coaching agreement, but there are some differences because when you deal with a group environment, you're dealing with a couple different issues. One is that you've got that community component, which is so important and so fantastic about having that group coaching container, but it does make things a little more difficult because you've got to deal with different personalities. You want to make sure everyone jives together. So you've got some kind of rules of conduct. And then you have some confidentiality kind of considerations built in there as well, making sure you as a business owner aren't liable if someone shares confidential information. And then if you have a course or a membership, something called a terms of use, which is what someone agrees to at checkout, is going to provide you that protection. So that's kind of the main offerings that we see a lot of people deal with. But Lauren, if you have any other specific questions, happy to answer those too.
Well, to be on this podcast, you signed a video release. Is that a good idea for people who are doing things like podcasts and online, video, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Things like a video release or a podcast. A lot of people use podcast guest recording agreements. So we're actually working on one of those now. But if you are, let's say you're hosting a virtual event and you want people to agree to a terms of use when they come and sign up for your event. We see a lot of those happening now where it's, you invite people, maybe it's your colleagues to come speak and you all kind of share with your email list and hopefully use it as an excellent marketing tool. And there's a lot of different speakers involved. You're going to have a speaker engagement agreement, right, that goes along with that. And then even things like if you have a VA, you want to use an independent contractor agreement. Or if you're using testimonials in your business, super important to make sure you get a testimonial release from your clients or your customers before you share their testimonial. And then even things like your blog post or presentations you give, even social media, you want to make sure you are kind of giving some bare bones disclaimers in those contexts, and something called a mini disclaimer, which we have available, can help you make sure you're kind of giving the big key heavy hitter disclaimers you need to give for those kinds of things.
Yeah, independent contractor agreement. That's what I was trying to think of this earlier when I was trying to say, I worked with a VA and we had an agreement and I can't remember what it's called. Independent contractor agreement. Yes. So that is a lot for someone. So you have all of these contracts available on your website. How do you make sure that your contracts are applicable to everyone who is buying them online? I know you also have a membership, Are you customizing these contracts every time you sell them to someone? How does that all work? How does someone know that the contracts you're selling them are compliant for their specific situation?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. So kind of first to back up a little bit, the reason why we did this is I love what you kind of shared earlier, Lauren. It can be so hard for small business owners to find an attorney who understands their industry, who's willing to take them on as a client. And so that's kind of the reason why we created all of this, just because Kelly and I came from big firm backgrounds where if someone had came to me and explained their online coaching business and needed a one-on-one client agreement drawn up, I would have had to do that from scratch because we didn't really help those type of people. And so, having these templates in place can really help you. We've even had people say that their attorney was so happy that they had these. They took them, they used our templates, they took them there to their attorney just to make sure that everything was perfectly, compliant. This person lived in Canada, actually. So if you don't live in the US, we, always recommend that you make sure you have an attorney review them, especially if you're in Canada, right? You need to make sure because there will be some changes that need to be made. But their even Canadian attorney was so happy to have the templates because they didn't understand the industry and they didn't have to draft something from scratch, which is very difficult as an attorney to kind of get to know someone's whole industry and make sure you've got all the proper protections in place for them. But in terms of kind of how the templates work, so we work mostly with coaches. So if you are a health and wellness coach, you're a registered dietitian, you're providing nutrition coaching advice, you're any type of nutrition practitioner or a health coach, we have a whole set of documents that are very specifically tailored to kind of your business in mind. So we draft them from kind of the perspective of a typical health and wellness practice, like one of those practices. And then we give you a lot of different options. So in terms of, just for example, your refund policy, we give you kind of options to use there, and we explain it in a video tutorial, which comes with all of our templates. We're going to walk you through every line, explain what it means. And then if it's something like this, where there's different options of language we've provided for you to use, we kind of walk through the pros and cons, and help you just make sure you feel really confident in filling out that template for your business. And then we also work with career coaches or business coaches, life coaches, kind of mindset coaches. So anyone who's not like a specific coach for health and wellness, just because that is so specific, you need very specific medical related disclaimers in place for those businesses. We have a different set of documents that are tailored to more the general coaching industry. Those documents have been drafted with kind of that set of coaches in mind. And then it's kind of similar things. So you go and you get your template, you have a video tutorial where Kelly or myself walks you through, on screen, kind of the whole template. We also want to make sure that you as a business owner feel really confident to answer questions you get from your clients or your customers. So if someone has a question about, hey, what is this? What does this provision mean? I don't really understand. You will sound super smart because you will know what it means yourself. And then you have that kind of explanation again of if there are different options in the contract, what do you, how do you need to think about those? What are the pros and cons? And then we just kind of explain, really clearly, this is how you can fill it out for your business. So that's typically how our contracts work. We get a lot of feedback. They're really easy to use, super user friendly. So we love that because that was kind of the whole goal, is to help people that, like yourself, who are having a hard time finding an attorney to work with them one on one, that they can at least have a contract template and they can, fill it out for themselves, and kind of get their legal protection done that way.
Great. Yeah, that sounds so much better than the hunting and pecking I was doing to try to find a lawyer to help me when I started my business. So, switching gears a little bit, and as an aside, you can tell me that you don't want to talk about this while I ask a question. Um, Switching gears a little bit, AI in business. Are there special considerations that business owners need to have when they start using AI in their business, for example, to write like marketing copy or to, and I know we were talking a lot about actual contracts, but um, are there any disclaimers that people have to consider when they're using AI in their business? Are there any other legal considerations that they should consider when they start using AI in their business? What should people know about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer this. And funny enough, we just sent an email to our email list about this last week. We did a training on it in our kind of our big promotion last fall. So we did a whole training on it. It had kind of a disclaimer template for people to use. So we really dug into this topic because AI can be so helpful for business owners. And we'd love to see, you guys, you take advantage of all the tools available to you, because we're all strapped on time. And if it can help you reach more people, help more people, we love that about it. So, in terms of kind of what to keep in mind, is that when you produce something on like a chat GPT, for instance, it has kind of sourced its information, right, based on other things available on the internet. So it's hard to ever guarantee for sure that there's not any kind of copyright issues associated with something it may say. So we always like to say, use it as a kind of inspiration tool, but you definitely should take whatever it produces and make it your own. So most of the time you're going to do that anyways, because sometimes you can tell, if a chat GPT or something has drafted something. So we see a lot of people, input it and then take it and really, change it a lot and make it their own, which I think is the best way to use it. And then, like I mentioned, just kind of comes into the in terms of like, how do you protect that intellectual property, but something that Chat GPT has made, right? And you didn't make it your own. You do run into some issues in terms of what ownership do you have in that copy. But if it is something you really took it, made it your own, you're going to have a lot more kind of legal leg to stand on. If someone ends up stealing that content from you, right? And something maybe you did put a lot of time into, Maybe it's in your course or there's some other kind of pillar piece of content for your business. If someone ends up stealing that and you did use like a chat GPT to help you, if you really took it, put your own spin on it, made it your own, you're going to have a lot easier time with kind of pursuing protection for it. But there are kind of some basic disclaimers we suggest that people use when they are, using content they printed from ChatGPT. We have kind of a disclaimer template that's available to the people in our membership and our bundle community. But basically, just kind of say like, "Hey, we used this AI, platform. If you use ChatGPT, ChatGPT was used to create this content, and we claim ownership of it, right? So just kind of some basic things, and we have that template. If you're interested in it, let me know. I'm, perhaps could share it with your audience. So feel free to reach out to us. But just making sure that you've kind of taken it, made your own is the biggest piece of advice we can give. And then just know that the intellectual property rights in that content are going to be shakier for you than if it was something that you had totally generated yourself. And then you do kind of always have to worry about, is it potentially violating copyright laws or some sort of copyrighted content when ChatGPT gave you that piece of content that it created for you.
Yeah, especially if it's word for word. And it's funny you talked about, being able to tell. A lot of people can tell now when the content is AI generated. Things like, skyrocket and game changer, and there's just some phrases that AI uses that make it very obvious that it's AI. So you want to put it in your own voice anyway so that people know how you sound and how you talk, and it can help you, like you said, help you brainstorm ideas, but the actual words should probably come from you. I think that's great advice. So, how often should online entrepreneurs be reviewing their contracts, their disclaimers, their legal documents in their business? Should it be, is there a set schedule, or is it just when something changes? How often should they be looking at that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So in generally, whenever, on the online space, we are kind of always facing like new and upcoming laws. A lot of them are privacy oriented, right? And then, even this year, as you may know, we had a new law came out impacting every single person that has an LLC, where you basically, if you're in the US, you need to provide the federal government with some very basic information about your entity to they can kind of make sure they're keeping tabs on who's owning LLCs. But there are kind of constantly like new updates or new things that come out, which is actually something we love about kind of how we serve people in our bundle program, is that we, do kind of take responsibility for making sure that you're staying up to date. So if there's something that comes out like this Corporate Transparency Act that I mentioned, you're going to get notice of that and get a training on it. And we talk about it in our Q&As, all those kinds of things. But in terms of how often you're reviewing your contracts, quarterly is great just to kind of look over them, make sure that whatever is what you put in your contract is still working for you. So even things like in your one-on-one coaching agreement, you're going to really clearly detail all the different things that people get when they come into your coaching container. So you're going to clearly detail the worksheets, how many meetings you're having with them, what kind of analysis you're providing them. So, once a quarter, it's great to go back and even look at things like that and just make sure that it hasn't changed, because you're going to be on the hook for providing them, what's in your contract. And then even things like your refund policies, making sure that that's still working for you. If you have a refund policy in place and someone didn't request a refund, you want to make sure that you feel like you've been adequately compensated for the work you did put in. So you want to kind of revisit those kinds of things. And then things like privacy legislation, things like that come into play can be really helpful to have contracts like ours, where if there is something that comes up, for as long as we're in business, you're going to get updates to your contracts automatically. And so that can be really helpful that, at least you don't need to be really worried about that. That's going to be something that we kind of handle for you. But then, it's a great way just to us to make sure that you're kind of up to date with other things that come out. Like I mentioned, like that Corporate Transparency Act. Um, so quarterly reviewing them can be super helpful. If you're a health and wellness practitioner, you definitely want this to be the case, because the kind of scope of practice and state nutrition laws that we all get to deal with, which are just super fun because there are 50 different states and 50 different state laws. those are constantly in flux. So it's good to just kind of keep tabs on those once a quarter and then kind of brush through your contracts, make sure whatever you've agreed to in there is still working for you. And that it still, reflects kind of what you're providing in your offers too.
Yeah, that's great. That's quarterly. That's more frequently than I would have guessed. So I'm glad that I asked the question. I would have thought yearly is enough. So I'll have to go back and look at my contracts. So what are some common misconceptions about legal protection, contracts, terms in the online business world that you would like to lay to rest here and now? What are things and myths that you hear out there that you want to set the record straight right here in this moment?
So I think one of the biggest ones and something that we get asked questions on all the times, probably are by far our most frequently asked questions come on scope of practice issues. So, if you are, whether you're a health and wellness coach, this definitely applies to you, or even if you're like a business coach or a career coach, we get a lot of questions about like what kind of things can I say or should I not say? Does this even apply to me because I am an online entrepreneur? So it definitely still applies to you. Even if you have an online business, you need to make sure you are aware of these scope of practice issues. So if you're a health and wellness professional, kind of what I mentioned, you're going to want to make sure you're kind of steering clear of certain defined scopes of practice, like the practice of medicine. And if you are not acting under your licensure, you're not a registered dietitian, you want to make sure you're staying clear of providing medical nutrition therapy. We get very, very deep into our programs, but kind of making sure you're staying out of those areas. And then if you are even like a business coach or you provide some sort of, ancillary business services to your clients, you want to make sure you are also crystal clear if you're not giving professional accounting advice or you're not a certified financial planner, you don't give professional legal advice, those are kinds of things. So that's kind of a big one that we get is that people think just because they have an online business that kind of these types of issues don't apply to them, but they definitely do. So something that can be easily handled once you kind of have the right information and you have the right education to make sure you are really making a right decision for your business in terms of how you talk to your clients, what you say on your website, what you say in your social media. Post really important. It's totally doable. That's definitely something you want to make sure that you get a good grip on. And then, like I mentioned before, kind of something that we see a lot of people do in the online space is use the same contract for all of their different offerings. So you've got kind of this one contract that your colleague kind of gave to you, and you think it's totally okay to use it for your one-on-one coaching. You're now got your group coaching program out. You've slapped it on your checkout process for your course. And just know that is you probably going to provide you some protection, but it's definitely leaving a lot of holes for you and honestly just a lot of missed opportunity for you to better serve your customers and your clients. Because at the end of the day, a well drafted contract is going to set you off on the right foot for your client relationship, really impress them with how professional you are, how much time you put into your business to make sure all this is really clearly laid out, that they have this clear roadmap of how your relationship's going to go. So that's kind of another one we see too is people using the same contract for all the different offers and then not really understanding the value of contracts from a customer or client service perspective as well. We've had some of our bundle members who say they've now kind of signed on clients that are attorneys and they themselves really impressed with their contract. So just an awesome way to start off your relationship by having these really clear customer, expectations and your relationship laid out. It's just an amazing way to start off your relationship with that client or customer.
Yeah, all things that it's really important to keep in mind. Well, Kristen, as we wrap up, what is one piece of advice either you want to reiterate that you've already said or something new that you want to make sure that people walk away from after our conversation today? Walk away from
Yeah,
with after our conversation today.
absolutely. So I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is that although the legal, getting your legal ducks in a row seems really daunting, it seems scary, it seems hard. A lot of people just like hate dealing with the legal stuff just as much as they hate dealing with accounting or, the finances of their business, which I totally get. I'm one of those people too. I hate dealing with all things accounting. But no, it's really, really important to put in place. And when you're using contract templates like the ones we have, It is really, really easy for you to do it, and we try to make it really enjoyable. So that would just kind of be my top tip would be, whether it's us or someone else, make sure you're actually getting that legal protection in place. Don't let kind of your fear of it or just this dislike for it kind of hold you back. It can be really simple and easy to put in place when you have someone kind of holding your hand through the whole process, and can do so much for you as a business owner, give you so much more confidence, really, really help you kind of achieve your business goals, help you grow your income, all of those things that you've been wanting to do because you have that confidence. You have like no fear getting your new offering out there, reaching more people, starting ads for your messaging, whatever it may be. So just definitely know it's doable. There's a lot of little things to check off, but it can be an enjoyable process. It definitely does not have to be scary or really, really time consuming to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was so helpful. I learned some things that maybe I need to check up on in my business, and I'm sure our listeners and viewers did as well. If people want to learn more about you and your services, where can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Instagram account is a great place to kind of connect with us. We try to have a lot of really helpful tips and tricks kind of up on there, and we're always happy to touch base with you via DM. So our Instagram handle is at Dotted Lines Contracts. It's a great place to touch base with us, to find us, to hear kind of our latest tips and tricks, all of that. So would love to see you over there.
All right, great. I'll make sure I put that link in the show notes and the description. And then, did you have a free gift you wanted to offer to our listeners and viewers today?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you kind of heard this podcast and you're a little overwhelmed, maybe you're more of a visual learner like I am. I always love to hear it, but I love to see it too. We have a great kind of startup guide for you on our website. It's called the Legally Ready Startup Guide. It's kind of our top 15 things to get in place, which sounds like a lot, but is really comprehensive. We wanted to make it really helpful for you that you can kind of use it as like a bare bones checklist to make sure you've got these things in place for your business. But that would be an excellent place to get started and kind of get some more information on some of the things we talked about today. So you can find that on our website. And Lauren, you may have the link available as well.
Yes, I will make sure that I include that in the notes as well. Well, thank you again, Kristen, for being here. I really appreciated it. It was very educational, and you made the legal jargon not seem quite so overwhelming. So, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Lauren. This has been so fun.
Yes. All right. And thank you all for watching and listening. And I will talk to you all next time. Bye.